Wave Defense Overdrive. Is it possible to get every accessory, every weapon, and every skill in just 12 hours? Let's find out. So it's currently 11:42 p.m., 6/10/2025. At basically the same exact time, but a.m., the challenge will be over. But of course, since that would be way too boring, I decided, hey, I'm gonna add a few challenges to spice this thing up. And what better challenge than wheels? The wheel! I'm gonna have 3 wheels, each one set with their own category, and see what I get debuffed with. Alright, for the first wheel, we have accessory slots. And it's doable. It's really doable. We can do it. All right, 2 accessories. Not a big deal, right? I think the skill could really make up for that one missing slot, but let's see. All right, here goes nothing. Oh boy. All right, look, permanently using the first skill we get in the game is better than having no skill at all, right? This is the most dangerous one. Let's see what we get. For those of you who think this is private servers, no. There is a private servers option, but this is much worse than private servers. This means even in a public lobby, I can't solo any boss. There has to be someone alive. If I could remove an option, I'd do this. Alright, now we got our debuffs, but as you know, I can't join on my main, nor can I go back on Canadian King, so let's pick out a new country. I should have gone on Germany. As I begin my first hour as the American King, the first thing I decided to do was redeem some codes. Anyways, since the confetti cannon is just a reskin of the slingshot, it doesn't count as a weapon. After making my first 3 bans as an American, I decided to go to the quests and got some okay quests. I mean, they're kind of bad, but they give good money, so I said, hey, you know what, screw it. And if you thought I was using that mediocre sword, you gotta be out of your mind. The first thing I did was buy the spear because of how good it is and because of how cheap it is at the same time, so I can keep a lot of money to get more weapons in the future rounds. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but this attempt was a fail. I slept on the 7th hour mark, and that was because the run was genuinely not only tiring, I was hungry, and there was no luck. It was getting worse and worse every hour, so I said no, I'm gonna redo the challenge another time. But guess what? That other time was 3 hours after that sleep. So unfortunately, I fell asleep. I was 7 hours in. Honestly, it was looking hopeless. If I continued the run, I don't think it would have been worth it, and the content wouldn't have been good. So here we're back at it again. It's 1:18 p.m., 6:11. So at 6:12, 1:18 a.m. is when the challenge ends, I guess. So yeah. All right. So to make it fair for the viewers, since sleeping on the challenge was a pretty pricky move, I decided to take 1 slot away. I've summed the ways you can get items in this game, so let's discuss them. The first one is droppable items, the second one is stuff you can buy, and the third one is stuff you can craft. So let's dive into the first one of the day, drops. Drops are items you can get from bosses or regular enemies. Essentially, there are 9 maps with 10 bosses. Each boss has its own specific weapon, accessory, and skill that can be dropped upon defeating it. For enemies, however, it differs because there are some enemies that have drops and some that don't, right? And they all vary per map. For example, the Slime Cave, not a single enemy has a drop. However, if you take a map like Alcigar Dark Swamp, which is an insane map, a lot of the enemies actually drop their own like unique thing, right? Actually, now that I think about it, all of them do except for the mages. So essentially, when it comes to regular enemies, almost all of them have a 1% chance to drop their specific unique item. However, when it comes to bosses, it's much more guaranteed because it has a high percent chance of getting it. So let's take their skills, for example. Every boss has their skill chance dropping at a rate of 7.5%, which is so much more doable than getting a skill from a regular enemy. However, we're talking about a boss, right? We're not talking about a regular enemy. Enemies you can find anywhere, right? But the boss, you got to make it through waves of enemies to get to them. So essentially, some bosses have different percentages for specific weapons and whatnot. Like the Mastrium, the last final big boss, has a 20% chance of getting his weapon. However, when you compare it to, for example, the Mushroom Forest, the boss, the Battle Mage, he has a 10% chance to drop his weapon. So it all differs, right? However, there is one boss that actually has this one drop that is so very unique, so hard to get that even players above level 100 don't have it. And that's Zarya, the mini-boss of the hardest map in the game. He has a 1% chance to drop an accessory. So essentially with this challenge, I had to find a way to get these accessories, without going insane. So what I planned to do was get my healer staff, right? And just start, staying at every map because I can't solo any boss, right? So I just stayed at a map and built up my multiplier meter. The thing that you see at the bottom right, it shows right now 1.4. I don't know, it's changing a lot. So essentially, I just plan to stay in a map and stay with that lobby and try to do as much games as I could with that said lobby without the map expiring, the game expiring, because it always does, right? So in this way, I was able to receive drops so much more easily because the rate was kind of more doubled, all right? It was doubled, so therefore I had a higher chance of getting it without going insane. I couldn't do the tactic where I join last wave and do the boss because A, that's pricky, and B, why would I do that? It's just a lot of stress to put upon, and it's not a good way to get accessories and items or boss drops. So I just stuck with that one thing and try to get accessories, during staying in a map, right? For regular enemies, I didn't try to grind for them at all. I was just saying, hey, I'm gonna leave it to luck. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I don't. Now let's move on to the second category. The game has 3 shops: the weapon shop, the accessory shop, and the skill shop. And from the list of how expensive they are, it goes skill shop, weapon shop, accessory shop. So for this plan to work, for the plan to buy out the entire shop to actually happen, I had to make money and I had to make it fast. So I had 2 ways of doing that, all right? I had to do both of them. So the first way were quests, okay? So I had 3 quest refreshes, which gained me a lot of money the more I did them, right? And the second one was the healer staff. You see, the healer staff has this move called Tether, right? And you're able to gain $1 per second while using it on someone who doesn't have full health, right? And it's also paired with a quick heal that gives you $6. So essentially, all I had to do was find a lobby where there were a Chaos Rune person, and it has to be a map that I haven't done yet, the map that I haven't had that much, boss drops from. So when I found those things that I wanted, I stayed in that lobby, right? And I just started healing this Chaos Rune guy like crazy. I kept making money. The money just kept coming in, right? There were also codes so I can get money, but I wasn't level 50 yet, so I couldn't redeem them, all right? So for the plan to work out, this is what I did. First thing I did was I bought the accessory shop. The accessory shop was extremely cheap, and the only 2 things that I didn't buy were the Death Band, I believe. No, not the Death Band. There were 2 things that costed 5,000. I was like, I'm not doing that. All right, so I left those 2 things, and then I went to the weapon shop. I bought as much as I could. Everything that was cheap, everything that was below 5,000, I bought it, right? Then I went to the skill shop. I bought everything that was below 5,000. Again, rinse and repeat. But there were 3 skills because the rest of the skills were way too expensive, right? So after that, I tried to keep getting money, but it was really hard, right? Because there were still $5,000 per weapon. That was way too expensive still. So that covers the buyable items. Now let's move on to the craftable ones. I kid you not, there were only 3 things I could craft because of this one material that it's used in almost everything, and I couldn't get it. I couldn't get enough of it. And it was the iron fragment. Yes, Yes, I needed so much iron for so many weapons that I just didn't have. I just didn't have iron, and that costed me so much weapons. But that was not a problem because I compensated with a lot of other things. So I was like, hey, you know what? It's fine. Alright, so good news and bad news. So the good news is the challenge is over. The bad news is you guys might get confused when I say it's not 13 hours, it's 12 hours. It's just that I paused the timer when I had to go to the restroom, when I had to eat like important stuff that I had to do during the day, like praying. That took time out of the run. So yeah, and in regards to the clock, I had to restart my PC laptop because of how much lag I was having. So in the process, when I opened the laptop again, the tab itself restarted, so the timer also restarted along with it. So yeah, it sucks.
So now that the run's over, I can finally report. I reached level 50. I got 36 weapons, 32 accessories, and 8 skills. So there were 74 weapons in total, 55 accessories in total, and 24 skills in total. So there's going to be math on the screen showing how this all adds up to 47%, well, roughly 47%, and that's how much I completed of the game.
Oh, what was that? You think you can do better? I know you can! Half of the fucking footage is me lagging! I would have done so much better if it wasn't me consistently crashing at the boss's round!